Hello and welcome to an India Today special broadcast from Kyiv in Ukraine. I'm Gaurav Sawant. Over the course of the bulletin, we will get you the latest developments, the battle on ground on day 17 and the diplomatic battle. Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky, he's now talking about negotiation. He's asking Israel to mediate, and mediation is on. But the battle on ground is also on. Several intense battles in terms of rocket strikes, missile strikes and air strikes. We'll tell you all. We begin with our top story.
These are not blown yet.
Series of explosions on day 17 of the Ukraine-Russia conflict. There was an explosion, a loud blast and fire in this building inside Kyiv.
In case main blockade is breached there and Russian forces are advancing, they can be put to fire. You see, this is a tank tracks. These are tank tracks from where the tanks passed last night. They came into the Ukrainian area very close to Brewery City. Forces here have moved up to the forefront there, which is 3 kilometers ahead, and are fighting, and they have abandoned it in anticipation that if the Russian forces come here, they do not find anything of value here.
On day 17, the battle is coming much closer to Kyiv. Fresh defenses are being dug up in several areas. Trenches are being made because now the preparation is on for pitched battles that will take place. Now, before I tell you more about the ground situation, the mayor of Melitopol, he has reportedly been abducted by the Russians. The mayor of Chernihiv, he's reported to have ended his life because he did not want to work with the Russians. Now, this country, for 17 days and counting, Ukraine is resisting the Russian advance. But the Russian advance has also intensified. There were several missile and rocket strikes late last night. Some continued till the day. Vasilkov, it's an airfield. It's a very critical airfield that was targeted. And several other vital assets and vital points are being targeted very close to the capital, Kyiv.
Air raid sirens. Heavy shelling. An attempted drone attack. Kyiv continues to face the wrath of Russia.
A loud blast and fire in this building inside Kyiv. Now, this is a residential area in Ukraine, in Kyiv. This was targeted. Multiple explosions have been reported on the outskirts of Kyiv. There were explosions and massive explosions reported in Irpin, in Bucha, in Brovary. But this is inside Kyiv.
The Russian army is inching closer to the capital, demolishing suburbs on their way, one way after another. Neighboring Baryshivka witnessed heavy bombings, drones shot down in Podil. Kyiv's outskirts are right in the eye of the storm.
The Russian rocket attack got into this building. God bless the people who live in this building, live for 3 days before. So right now they have no place where to come back. And Nikolai is a real witness. He saw how this rocket, what it caused, and the fire, which they tried to save something, but it was impossible. So here what we see behind us.
Residents have been forced to leave their homes and take shelter in the basement of buildings with a limited stock of essentials.
I'm here in the shelter in the makeshift kitchen. This is the place being used now, the makeshift kitchen. People who had proper houses, everything, now forced to live like this. This is another part of the basement. These are the water plants and the heating plants for the whole building, which is a multi-story building. But right now, this whole area and beyond this has been converted into a kind of store for water and all for the people who have taken shelter here. And there are also some beds there in the corner where people are staying at present.
The second largest city in Ukraine, Kharkiv, faces relentless bombardment. Smaller towns in the city paint a picture of destruction. Different cities, but similar stories of horror and loss from the shelters.
Before war started, Kharkiv had been the students' capital of Ukraine. This is the student hostel of Kharkiv National Aerospace University. All of you have to understand that bandit Kremlin regime started this war against all free world, and we have to stop it together.
Continuous shelling and airstrikes in the town of Dnipro has reduced the buildings of the city to rubble. As towns like Volnovakha and Mykolaiv continue to burn, residents run for their lives. Citizens that were once brimming with life and urban settlements now have become ghost towns. The Ukraine president has claimed over 7,000 Ukrainians have been evacuated from over 4 cities.
Today, Russian troops also disrupted the work of most humanitarian corridors. But despite everything, 7,000 people were saved from Enerhodar, Bucha, Hostomel. And these are 7,000 reasons to try to organize evacuation for Ukrainians from the besieged cities tomorrow and the day after tomorrow.
The sun slowly goes down on Ukraine. The country is bleeding profusely, left alone to fend for themselves. With Rajesh Pawar and Geeta Mohan in Ukraine, Bureau Report, India Today.
The missiles and rockets are hitting military targets, but they're also hitting civilian areas, and people are in panic. And this is happening very close to Kyiv. Now, this battle is not just restricted to either Irpin or Bucha or Brovary. India Today's team, camera person Pawan Kumar and I, we travelled to Bela Sirkov. We've travelled to Vasilkov. These are some of the suburbs of Kyiv. They're in the Kyiv region, but the Russian forces have targeted, or their missiles and rockets have hit civilian areas. And these are multi-launch rocket systems, one after the other in quick succession. Russian rockets, they struck a civilian area. Several homes were destroyed. People were forced to abandon their homes. We spoke to the army on ground, and they are saying that this battle is coming very close to Kyiv, but the bigger cause for concern for them is the targeting of civilians, which they say is becoming more intense, compelling lakhs to leave their homes. Massive damage in Russian bombing in this residential area in the Kyiv region. This is Bela Sirkov. This is about 70 kilometers from the heart of Kyiv. And just look around. These are residential homes that have been damaged in the shelling. Destruction here, and multiple rockets, multiple rounds fired in this area, and many homes in this area have been destroyed. This was somebody's house. The entire frontage here has been destroyed. The study room there, the kitchen there, everything stands destroyed. And this is just one home. Let me also show you the destruction at another home here. And many homes, whether you look at the shrapnel in that house, whether you look at the destruction in this house, or you look at the damage in that house. And this entire locality has now been vacated. As you can see in images, soon after the bombing, people are rushing out of here. They're leaving this area because it's considered unsafe. Now, one set of rocket that comes and then that volley continues to come in. These are civilian areas that are being targeted. The soldiers say that there is no military installation in this area, and yet residential blocks continue to be targeted on the outskirts of Kyiv. With cameraman Pawan Kumar in Bela Sirkov, Ukraine, Gaurav Sawant for India Today. Day 17 of the battle is coming alarmingly close to the capital Kyiv. But it's not as if the Russians are having a field day or an easy ride. They are being resisted at every step. In fact, several Russian tanks were destroyed in the Brovary area, where India Today's Shweta Singh, Geeta Mohan and I were reporting. Now, the Russians have actually been pushed back, according to a report filed by our colleague Rajesh Pawar. the Russian forces, they tried to advance, but the big defense, the massive defense and a counter attack mounted by the Ukrainian forces forced the Russians to step back and reassess their strategy. And even as we speak, you can hear shelling at a distance. And this shows that even on day 17, this battle for the capture of Kyiv and for the defense of Kyiv is well and truly on.
Here you see behind me is an infantry combat vehicle, ICV, which is used to carry infantry troops into the battlefield. It has armored protection, so they are protected from small arms fire. But it has been destroyed, probably using an anti-tank missile, probably a javelin missile. And this was probably 2 nights before that this has happened. This is a box of the captain. Captain here, this is trying to show, this is all the equipment they have recovered. They told I can take this away. This is the Russian army, the t-shirt, all the clothes here, equipment here is from the Russian army, which has been recovered from the tank. They have tore the tanks away, but this is all is left over behind here, behind us. There is a pile of disposable anti-tank rocket launchers, and a lot of them here which have been used, and they have been kind enough to allow us to film this. Besides this, we are not allowed to film anything. Liana, you are not afraid?
No.
No?
No.
No? Garage. And what weapon you are carrying?
I have pistol.
Can I show? Can I show here? It's a Makarov pistol she's carrying, and you were before this. What work were you doing? Работа. Что работа before this?
Полиция.
She was police, armed police.
Кинова.
She was in armed police before this, and now she's working along with the army to defend this checkpost, which is on the front lines between Russian army and the Ukrainian army. What you see behind me here are few concrete blocks placed on the road, but there are thousands, not thousands, maybe hundreds of tires here, which are placed on the road. Please show that side also. Hundreds of these tires placed everywhere. This is not a main blockade. This is a secondary blockade. And why so many tires here? This is important to know. These are here so that in case main blockade is breached there and Russian forces are advancing, they can be put to fire. And once they are put to fire, this road is denied to any convoy of Russian army coming towards Brovary and onwards to Kyiv. This is probably damaged by the machine gun fire, and there are many such cars on this track now here, very close to the front line to Russian and the Ukrainian troops. I'm a kilometer inside now from the last post held by the Ukrainian forces. This is a car which has again been hit by a shell, probably a tank shell here, because this area witnessed tank battles last night and night previous to that. A car and a school bus had been some kind of a shell, probably a tank shell. And look at these concrete blocks which are broken now. I think they have been hit, all three of them have been hit by one shell, probably a tank shell. I'm standing here in front of a military station which is totally closed and it has been abandoned now. This is just about 3 kilometers from where the Russian troops are face to face with the Ukrainian troops. Look, this is here, damaged car here. There, show gunshots on the car there, if you see. So this military station has been abandoned now. Probably the forces here have moved up to the forefront there, which is 3 kilometers ahead, and are fighting, and they have abandoned it in anticipation that if the Russian forces come here, they do not find anything of value here. Right now, I'm standing in front of a factory which is hit by a missile just an hour back. It's the burnt out railings on the top, and this whole factory has been totally damaged by a missile which fell here about an hour back. This factory is about 3 kilometers away from Brovary town on the outskirts, and just about a kilometer away from the front line between Russian and the Ukrainian troops. See, these fire tenders have reached here in this factory, which is totally on fire, which has been totally destroyed by a Russian missile. See the smoke cover, totally, the whole area is full of smoke now. Sun has been infiltrated, so much of smoke, whatever I can capture with this phone camera. If I can see, it is black smoke, a lot of now white smoke, the whole area has been damaged. And there in the background you see those flags flying, including a flag of Ukraine and European Union, which Russia
wants Ukraine to stay away from. See, one missile has damaged both sides of the building. You see the burnt out part, it is more this iron sheets of blue in color. Now it's all changed to white and black after the fire caused by the missile attack. The whole factory has been damaged. There are only debris everywhere. And some black smoke emanating. This has been emanating for the last 1 hour now since the area was hit by the missile. Rajesh Pawar for India Today.
Inch by inch, the Russian forces are trying to advance further. Kherson was one city that they took control of. They're trying to take control of Chernihiv, where reports here seem to indicate that the mayor chose to end his life. He decided not to work with the Russians. Now, the same thing is being reported in Melitopol. There again, the mayor did not want to work with the Russians, is the information that we are getting, and he's been abducted by Russian forces. The Russian forces include the army, the militia, the Chechen fighters, the Wagner teams. Multiple forces are operating on ground, and it's not just the siege by the security forces, it's the subversion, it's the commando tactics that's also a cause for grave concern as far as the Ukrainian forces on ground are concerned. We bring you this report from Melitopol.
The war in Ukraine is raging on for nearly 20 days now. Russia has repeatedly assured the international community that it's not targeting civilians, despite contrary reports from the ground. This is the moment mayor of a city called Melitopol, Ivan Fedorov, is abducted, allegedly by Russian soldiers. The video shows Russian soldiers taking the mayor out of a building with his head covered. Ukraine's Internal Affairs Ministry confirmed that the mayor was abducted after he refused to cooperate with the Russians. There's no information about Mayor Fedorov's whereabouts. His city is in Russian control. Ukrainian President Zelensky condemned the abduction, calling it a sign of Russia's weakness.
Today in Melitopol, the invaders captured mayor of the city, Ivan Fedorov, a mayor who courageously defends Ukraine and the people of his community. Obviously, this is a sign of the weakness of the invaders.
The kidnapping has sparked a flurry of protests. Thousands of Melitopol residents marched to the administration building, demanding the release of their mayor. According to Ukrainian media, Russian forces entered Melitopol on the second day of their invasion. Since then, the mayor had led several rallies with thousands of attendees. On March 5th, Fedorov reportedly said that the situation in the city was getting difficult due to a food and medicine shortage. The mayor also called for a humanitarian corridor to let the residents leave, which was denied by Russian forces. Bureau Report, India Today.
Ukraine was once famous for its tourist spots, for backpackers who wanted to enjoy nature in all its glory. Ukraine is also known as the breadbasket, not just for Russia, but for entire Europe. But Ukraine today is very different 17 days into this war. City after city abandoned, city after city bombed, in some instances to rubble. For example, Mariupol. For another example, take another example of Odessa, that's repeatedly been targeted, and multiple such cities are in the line of Russian fire, whether it's missiles, rockets, air-to-ground weapons, or even the Smerch multi-launch rocket systems. The tragedy is, in 17 days, this country has changed, taken a turn for the worse, and many fear it'll take a very long time before this ancient city with its old churches and buildings and quarters, whether it can once again be rebuilt to its lost glory.
Captivating cathedrals, marvelous monasteries, historic monuments, and cities with grand historic landscapes. This was Ukraine for tourists holidaying in Europe's second largest country. Unfortunately, all that's left for one to see in Ukraine now is non-stop missile attacks and explosions, the bloodstains of innocent civilians on roads, and heartbreaking scenes of citizens fleeing from their own home with tears. Images on your screens show the mass destruction captured in the central city of Ukraine in Dnipro. Once bustling and full of life, massive shelling and continuous airstrikes by Russia has reduced the buildings of the city to debris. The beautiful town of Volnovakha has also been impacted by heavy shelling in the last few weeks. The intensity of the attacks is visible. Smoke continues to emerge from the buildings that are burnt and in shambles. Kharkiv, the second largest city in Ukraine, continues to be one of the worst hit. Yatskoka, a village in the suburbs of Kharkiv, is now filled with scenes of heavy damage to residential buildings. These videos are from a suburb in Barishivka of the capital city of Kyiv, which is in ruins. The outskirts of the region has been reduced to rubble. Commercial establishments are burnt, residential buildings reduced to debris.
Ukraine is also a traveler's paradise. This is one of those last genuine destinations in Europe where you can explore a lot of areas. And this is a tourist paradise, or at least it was, when lakhs and lakhs of tourists visited this country earlier. Now the problem is this country is just struggling to stay afloat amidst the Russian invasion. With cameraman Pawan Kumar in Kyiv, Ukraine, Gaurav Sawant for India Today. On day 17, as the battle for Kyiv intensifies with multiple rocket and missile attacks, there is also an effort to find a diplomatic solution. And world leaders are increasingly now trying to get President Putin to agree to a ceasefire. So you've had the German Chancellor Scholz, you have the French President Emmanuel Macron. They've reached out to the Russian President. President Zelensky of Ukraine is also seeking an intervention. He wants Israel to mediate and he wants talks with the Russian President in Jerusalem. Will this bring an end to this conflict? Will it at least bring a ceasefire, and that imminent attack on Kyiv, will it stall or stop it? Our next report explores.
Diplomatic talks behind closed doors. Unabated assault on ground. The irony of this conflict is hard to miss. Satellite towns reduced to rubble, the Russians have paved their way into Kyiv's doorstep. Missiles and bombs are flying across Ukraine's skies, and so are the claims and counterclaims between the presidents of the two warring nations. With 4 rounds of talks between Russia and Ukraine deadlocked so far, Vladimir Putin has dropped a big hint.
I will obviously inform you about the situation in Ukraine. First of all, on the progress of the talks that continue practically on a daily basis. There are certain positive shifts. Negotiators on our side tell me.
Putin's claim was promptly rejected by Ukraine's foreign minister Dmytro Kuleba, who said there's been no progress in peace talks. Upping the ante against Moscow, Ukrainian President Zelensky refused to back down, claiming that his forces are heading now towards victory. Zelensky called out Putin for attacking cities and civilian structures.
We can see our military victories and enemies' losses. We expect that the fight will be over sooner, that the occupants will fall sooner. But it is life, it is war, it is a fight. We still need time, we still need patience, our wisdom, energy and ability to do our job at the highest level to reach the victory together.
Amid this fierce war of words, missiles continue to rain over Ukraine. Putin is clearly tightening his grip, refusing to budge on his demands. His men now at Kyiv's gates. Are Russian troops gearing up for greater escalation if peace talks break down? Bureau Report, India Today.
There is considerable alarm worldwide after Russia claimed that there are bio labs here in Kyiv, in Ukraine, that are working in tandem with the United States, and biological weapons are being produced here. The United States, of course, denied it. The US said these claims are preposterous. But there are also reports that Ukraine has been advised to destroy all the material to prevent any accidental or deliberate leak as Russian forces advance towards Kyiv. Sneha Mordani brings us this report.
Imagine biological weapons entering a war that has already killed thousands and displaced millions. The devastation would be swift, the humanitarian consequences massive. The world is concerned, worried enough for the World Health Organization to send out a warning. It has asked Ukraine to destroy all pathogens in its laboratories. A leak of a pathogen could worsen the already existing COVID pandemic. More dangerously, it will serve as a biological weapon. Russia says the United States has chemical and biological weapons labs in Ukraine.
We confirm facts revealed during the special military operation in Ukraine, which prove that the Kyiv regime has been destroying the evidence of military biological programs Kyiv was implementing. They were funded by the US Department of Defense.
A claim that's been endorsed by China. The White House has termed the Russian claim as preposterous.
We are directly involved. We are providing $1 billion in security assistance. We are the largest provider of that. We are providing humanity. With the U.S. military going and engaging in Ukraine and fighting a war against Russia, we don't have any intention to do that. Russia is the country that has a chemical and biological weapons programs.
President Zelensky of Ukraine too went on record as saying that Ukraine had no biological weapons.
They accuse us, again us, that we are allegedly developing biological weapons. Allegedly, we are preparing a chemical attack. This makes me really worried, because we have been repeatedly convinced. If you want to know Russia's plans, look at what Russia accuses others of. Look, spreading such accusations in the Russian media shows that it is they who are capable of this.
America, on the other hand, has charged Russia with having plans to use biological weapons in Ukraine. The worry is Russia has a track record and a stockpile of biochemical weapons, including nerve agents.
The showdown over biological weapons even reached the doors of the United Nations.
We believe Russia could use chemical or biological agents for assassinations as part of a staged or false flag incident, or to support tactical military operations.
I remember another story which was mentioned many times and in many contexts about the container shown by Colin Powell, which became the foundation for the United States going into Iraq, leading to huge levels of suffering, victims and destruction, which then also reverberated in the whole region in the form of the terrorist organization called ISIL.
The UN, however, made it clear that there was no evidence to back Russia's claim of a biological weapons program in Ukraine.
The United Nations is not aware of any biological weapons programs.
So what exactly are bioweapons? The WHO says biological weapons are microorganisms like viruses, bacteria, fungi or other toxins that are produced and released deliberately to cause disease and death in humans, animals or plants for strategic effects. A new potentially dangerous dimension has been added to the Russia-Ukraine war, one that has to be countered at any cost.
The World Health Organization has asked the government in Ukraine to destroy all the pathogens in labs in Ukraine to ensure that there is no threat of a biological leak or a problem that could create a situation worse than the COVID pandemic. Russia, of course, has warned that the government here in Ukraine is trying to ensure that there would be biological weapons that are being prepared, a charge that's been denied very strongly by the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. With cameraman Pavan Kumar in Borvori, Ukraine, Gaurav Sawant for India Today. It's -3 degrees here in Kyiv at this point of time, and it's likely to get colder tonight. A quick break, lots more coming up on this special broadcast from Ukraine. Stay with us. Day 17 of conflict here in Kyiv. There is palpable tension. Will there be intense artillery strikes or airstrikes or missile strikes even tonight? Will they intensify in the days ahead? Or will diplomacy bring an end to this conflict? War is terrible. Lakhs have been displaced. Lakhs in this country today are without electricity, they are without gas. Many more have been forced not just to flee their homes, live in shelters, but flee the country in hope of a better future. All eyes now on diplomacy, if that brings an end to this conflict, or fear that this conflict may escalate in the days ahead.
A lonesome violin crying its tune in a basement. Unappreciated, fearful and alone. Waiting for the next bomb to fall. Yet defiant, to play on till the sound of war can no longer be heard. Photos and video of a crying newborn, wrapped in blanket, and a smiling mother. From the other side of divide, in Luhansk. Still a child of war. The violin plays on, a mournful background to newly turned rubble. Lives that were normal less than a month ago. Buildings that housed dreams and hopes and everyday matters. More than 200 schools, around 35 hospitals, and hundreds of residential buildings, possibly close to 2,000, have been destroyed since the war began in Ukraine 2 weeks ago. Towns and villages across the eastern half of the besieged country do not have electricity and water. And in the intense cold of the snow-covered terrain, there is no heat. Millions of ordinary Ukrainians are hiding in bunkers and shelters, shivering in the cold uncertainty of mounting loss. UNICEF has put up this appeal on their landing page on Ukraine. Children in Ukraine are facing a deadly crisis as the hostilities in their country are increasing. Like all conflicts, this is turning into a children's crisis, and they will need as much humanitarian support and help as we can provide. UNICEF says there are 7.5 million children in Ukraine, and the war poses an immediate threat to their lives and well-being. With the intensifying of indiscriminate bombing of civilian targets, lives are being lost, and some of them are children. On 7th of March, human rights sources inside Ukraine released actual numbers of children killed, 38 dead and 71 injured. The survivors are rushing to the borders, clad in their winter clothing, holding on to their mothers or elders, trusting hands clasping those of adults, making unplanned journeys to the unknown. to faraway lands where strangers try and make them feel welcome.
Just 2 days ago, we had a transport of 700 kids. And, it's not easy to find a place for anybody, but it's even tougher to find a place for 700 kids in the same one place.
As their homes and lives are torn apart by other unseen strangers, firing big guns from somewhere beyond the dreadful horizon. Natasha, a 16-year-old Ukrainian refugee from before this war even started, writes, "The war came to us and happiness is no more than a ghost from my dreams." Natasha used to live in the seaside village of Shirokne in eastern Ukraine. The last time she saw her house, she was 11. Natasha writes, "Our hearts are full of sadness. We have no home. The night is black. Two children died among the 21 on Tuesday in Sumy. The victims had been killed in an airstrike on a residential street. At that time, a ceasefire was supposed to be in force. Volunteers building barricades and installing them on the streets. Hopes of slowing the advance of tanks and armor on roads meant for peacetime traffic. A father's goodbye. Women and children fleeing. At a border crossing, a pianist. A bullet-ridden bus in Kyiv. A comrade gone away. And a wedding in fatigues, in times when only the present remains, the future obscure. Every day that the war in Ukraine goes on, every day that the bombs rain from above, every time another school goes up in flames, and every bullet that takes a parent away, another Natasha's heart fills with sadness. 100 hearts sad, and the night stays black.
India Today has the biggest team of reporters on ground zero, and we will continue to report from battleground Kyiv. But that is all camera person Pavan Kumar and I, Gaurav Sawant, have for you on this special broadcast. Many thanks for watching.